study,
and play come together on a Windows 11 PC.
And for a limited time, college students get
the best of both worlds.
Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
You're listening to Unbound Presents Until They Wake. 7 episodes, 6 lives, 1 impossible convergence. Beth Curry's been chasing these stories for a while now, and she's finally ready to share what she found. It's not what you'd expect. Nothing about this is. Pull up a chair. This one's different.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Beth Curry, and you're listening to Until They Wake. This is the last story, the 6th person. Soon, tomorrow, I'm going to tell you how these all kind of tie in together. So we had Danny Walsh in 76, Ruth Mitchell in 87, James Cooper in 95, Maria Gonzalez in 2001, Bill Harrison in 1992. These were 5 stories across 3 decades. You know, construction sites, car crashes, a lake in September, a Brooklyn sidewalk, a bathroom floor in Minneapolis. Today I'm taking you to 2008, October. It was a red-eye flight from Philadelphia to San Francisco. It was flight 2317. This is a story of a woman named Meera Sharma. She was 32 years old at the time, pharmaceutical sales. She lived out of a suitcase more than she lived in her own condo. And on that October night, she boarded a plane, she says, changed everything. Meera's first memory of flying was being 6 years old on a trip to visit her grandparents in Mumbai. Her father held her hand during takeoff while her mom explained how airplanes work. Lift, thrust, drag, physics made simple for a child. Her father told her it was perfectly safe. It was safer than driving. Meera believed him. She believed in the magic of what she calls metal birds that could carry hundreds of people across oceans. She believed in the impossible made routine. So by 2008, flying was just part of her job. You know, Chicago to Boston, Phoenix to Seattle, Miami to Minneapolis. The cities blurred together. Same hotel chains, obviously, same conference centers, same sales pitches to different doctors. Her parents worried that she traveled too much. Her mom asked her every visit when she was going to settle down and get married, stop living out of a suitcase. Meera says she liked her job. You know, she was focused on making regional director before 35. She wanted to prove she was good at this. You know, she could build something that was hers. She lived in Philly, a condo that she barely spent time in. She said it was modern and minimal and the kind of place that could belong to probably anyone. Her mail would pile up and her plants would die from neglect. The fridge was mostly takeout containers and coffee creamer. Her best friend, Priya, said that she was avoiding real life, and Meera told her to watch her do it. But Priya was probably right, she said. There was something appealing about the transience of travel. You know, the way that you could be a slightly different version of yourself in every city. You know, nothing had to stick. She dated occasionally, she said. Nothing serious. Her last relationship ended 2 years prior. When the man she was with asked her to travel less and be home more, choose him over her career. Meera couldn't do it. You know, he told her she was married to her job when they broke up, and maybe she was, but at least her job didn't ask her to be someone she wasn't. The recession had hit hard in 2008, and budgets were tighter, and sales were harder to close, and Meera was working longer hours than ever. She said her manager, Patricia, pulled her aside in September and told her she was burning out and needed to take some time. Meera said she was fine. Patricia said she wasn't, but Meera couldn't slow down because if she did, she might have to sit in the silence of her condo and the question of whether any of this was adding up to anything. She thought it was better to keep moving and keep flying and keep existing in that in-between spaces of airports and hotel rooms where nothing was quite real. Priya called in late September. She was getting married in December and she wanted Meera to be her maid of honor. Meera said, of course, she wouldn't miss it. Priya asked if she could actually commit to that and actually show up. Meera promised, and she meant it. And Priya had been her best friend since college. You know, she had to put up with all of it. So if Priya was asking this of her, Meera would be there, of course. But first, she had to get through October. So October 16th, 2008, she had a red-eye flight, Philly to San Francisco. It was leaving at 11, arriving at 2 in the morning local time. She'd done it 100 times. She'd sleep on the plane and wake up in a new city and hit the ground running. It was a Boeing 757, she said, and it was the window seat, row 23. She had her routine, neck pillow, noise-canceling headphones, sleep mask, board buckle in, zone out. The plane was maybe 2/3 full, business travelers mostly, some families, a baby crying somewhere in the back. She texted Priya when they waited on the tarmac, and Priya sent her back a heart emoji. Of course, they weren't called emojis back then, she said, but that's what it was, the less than 3 symbol. The safety demonstration played on the screens. Meera had seen it so many times she could recite it, but she watched anyway out of habit or superstition or just routine. In the unlikely event of a water landing, the word always stuck with her, unlikely, the kind of thing that happens to other people. They took off on time. The stomach drop feeling as the wheels left the ground, the city lights falling away below. Meera pulled out her laptop, but the exhaustion caught up with her before she'd opened a single file, she said. So she closed it and she reclined her seat and she closed her eyes. She was asleep before they crossed into Ohio, she figured. She didn't know how long she slept, an hour, maybe 2, and she woke up to screaming. The plane was shaking. It was not turbulence. Meera knew turbulence, she said. This was different. It was violent. It was wrong. Oxygen masks were dropping from the panels above. The cabin lights were flickering. Someone was praying loudly in Hindi, the same prayers her grandmother used to say. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, fighting static, mechanical difficulties, attempting emergency sumping. The rest was kind of swallowed up by alarms and crying and the awful groan of metal under stress. They were descending fast. Meera said she could really feel it. That same stomach drop from takeoff, but lasting too long and going too far. She grabbed the armrest, she said, and her nails dug into the leather, and the woman next to her was sobbing, and the man across the aisle had his eyes closed and his lips were moving in silent prayer. Time did something strange, she said. It kind of stretched and compressed at the same time. She said that each second felt both endless and instantaneous. She thought about her parents and about missing her father's birthday last month because of work, and she thought about Priya's wedding, about all those flights, all those cities, and all that time spent in motion. And then impact, the sound of everything breaking at once. When Meera opened her eyes, there were hospital lights above her and voices, and someone asking if she could hear them. A doctor told her she was very lucky, that most of the passengers hadn't made it. Lucky, that word again. Her parents flew in from Chicago. Priya drove down. They all looked at her like they were still processing the fact that she was sitting in front of them. Her mother held her so tight she could barely breathe. The NTSB investigated. There was a mechanical failure, something in the hydraulic system. One of those statistically improbable events that becomes probable when enough planes fly enough miles. Out of 187 passengers, 14 survived, and Meera was one of them. The months after the crash are where Meera's story got interesting for me. She couldn't fly for 6 months. She said she had panic attacks every time she approached an airport, and her career, which was built entirely on constant travel, was ground to a halt. Patricia told her to take all the time she needed, but Meera wasn't sure she'd ever be ready. She stayed in Philly. She went to therapy 3 times a week. She worked with a specialist in traumatic event recovery. She learned breathing techniques and grounding exercises and all the tools for managing fear that doesn't have an off switch. She says she kept thinking about the other passengers. Why her? What made her different? What made her lucky when 173 other people weren't? She started writing about it, not for publication, just for herself, just processing, trying to make some kind of sense out of survival. By summer, the writing had turned into something bigger. She had an agent who thought it could be a book. People want to hear survivor stories, she said, especially one like this. The book came out in 2010, Higher Ground, One Survivor Story of Flight 2317. It did better than anyone expected. Book tours, interviews, speaking engagements. Meera was suddenly the face of survival. She was this miracle passenger, the woman who beat the odds. It felt surreal, she says, wrong in ways that she couldn't quite articulate, like she was profiting from something she didn't earn. But it also gave her purpose that she hadn't had before. She had meetings with other survivors and advocacy for airline safety and helping families of victims find something that resembled closure. Her relationship with flying changed. She eventually got back on planes. She had to for book tours and events, but it was never routine again. Every takeoff felt different than it had before. She moved to Philly permanently in 2012, bought a house, got a dog, started looking for something real instead of something temporary, and she met Ryan in 2013, a teacher, grounded in a way Meera had spent her whole adult life avoiding, patient with her fears and steady through the nightmares that still came sometimes. They got married in 2014, small ceremony, close friends and family. Priya was her maid of honor, 7 years after Meera had missed Priya's own wedding because she'd been too busy flying to be present. Better late than never, Priya said. Life settled into something resembling normal. She wrote a second book, and she had speaking engagements and volunteer work with aviation safety groups and this life that wasn't really about running anymore. But October 16th was always hard, she said. Every year, that date came around, and some part of Meera was back on Flight 2317, feeling the plane fall and hearing the screaming. She says that therapy helped, and Ryan helped, and time helped, but it never fully disappeared. In October 2015, Meera was invited to speak at a hospital conference on trauma recovery. They wanted her to share her story with other survivors, car accidents, violent crimes, all, the kinds of people who'd been through things that changed them permanently. The conference was scheduled, and Ryan drove her there and helped her set up, and he sat in the front row during her talk. Meera tells me she spoke for 45 minutes about the plane crash and the survival and the long road of recovery, and about how she found purpose inside of her trauma, and she learned to live with fear without letting it run the show. She says the applause was warm, and people came up afterward to talk and share their own stories. Meera stayed later than planned, present in a way she never used to be, like she was actually there and listening. She wasn't already thinking about the next city. She was present. By the time she finished, it was almost 8, and Ryan had already left. He had an early meeting and had to get back home. He'd asked if she was sure she was okay driving back alone, and she told him she was fine. The hospital was quiet as she packed up. Hallways were mostly empty, that kind of stillness that we all know about when the building winds down for the night. She headed towards the exit and took a wrong turn. The corridor she ended up in looked older than the rest. It was less maintained and kind of a hallway that belonged to an earlier version of a building that's been added over the decades. She retraced her steps, but took another wrong turn and then another, and somewhere in the process, a fire alarm went off. It was sharp and sudden, and her heart rate spiked immediately, and her breath went short, she said. All the signs of a panic attack she knew too well by now. But she kept moving this time instead of stopping. She looked for exit signs, found a stairwell, followed it down, pushed through a door, and stepped out into the fresh air. And she stood there for a moment and let herself breathe till the panic subsided. Meera Sharma, October 16th, 2008, Flight 2317, 187 passengers, 14 survivors. 7 years of building a life that didn't revolve around running. A marriage, a purpose, a way of living with what happened without letting it swallow everything else. Tomorrow's the final episode, and I'm going to tell you what connects all 6 of these people. I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me, and I'm going to ask you a question that I've been sitting with all this time about certain moments and whether some of them ever really end. I'll see you then.
That's it for this episode of Until They Wake. Unbound is free to listen to. If you'd like to support production costs or get in touch with Beth, check the show notes for details. See you next time.